She asked it while I was driving, eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. When did you stop loving me? Her voice cracked just enough to sound human again. I didn't look at her. I just kept driving, the hum of the tires louder than her question. The sun was setting over the interstate, turning the windshield into a sheet of orange light. I watched the reflection of her hand grip the edge of the seat. I could tell she was rehearsing her next move. She always did that when she felt control slipping away. I said, "Around the same time you started lying to me." Silence. Then a sharp breath. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her fingers tighten around the dashboard, like she was bracing for impact. She didn't expect honesty, not the kind that doesn't yell, doesn't justify, doesn't apologize. Just clean, surgical truth. The air in the car got heavier. She turned toward me, waiting for me to soften it somehow, to take it back, to tell her I didn't mean it. But I did. I meant every word. I kept driving, passing a sign for an exit we'd taken hundreds of times before. The one that used to lead to weekend getaways, late-night laughter, shared playlists, and coffee stops at Starbucks. Funny how the same route could feel completely foreign when love had left it. She said, quieter this time, "You can't mean that." I didn't answer. I didn't even blink. She shifted in her seat, trying to find something. Anger, tears, anything that would make me look at her. But I didn't. My focus stayed on the road ahead, the lines stretching endlessly forward. That's when she said, "You're different." And I said, "No, I'm just done pretending." The rest of the drive was silent. No music, no words, just two people sitting inches apart, separated by miles of everything unsaid. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she didn't move. She just sat there, staring out the window, realizing that love doesn't die in arguments. It dies in quiet moments like this, when the truth is too calm to fight. I turned off the engine, grabbed my keys, and said, "Take your time." Then I got out, leaving her in the car, still holding onto the dashboard like it could stop her world from spinning. That was the night she finally realized, love doesn't disappear. It just stops showing up where it's not respected. When I walked into the house that night, the silence followed me inside. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy kind, the one that sits in the corners and waits for someone to speak first. I tossed my keys on the counter, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the sink. She was still outside in the car. 15 minutes passed before I heard the door open. Her footsteps were slow, careful. She didn't slam anything, didn't start a fight. That's how I knew it hit her. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just lingers until it changes everything around it. She walked past me without saying a word, went straight to the living room, and sat on the couch. The same couch where, not long ago, we used to fall asleep watching Netflix with takeout containers on the table. It felt like a museum now. Everything looked familiar, but had no meaning left. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was small, like she was talking to herself. "I never lied to you." I turned to face her. "You lied every time you made me feel like I was the only one trying." Her eyes met mine for a second before she looked away. I could see the cracks forming, the part where her confidence used to live. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't destroy people. It just removes the mask they thought they needed to survive. She stood up, grabbed her phone, and walked toward the stairs. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask where she was going. I'd learned that silence sometimes says more than confrontation ever could. Later that night, I found her sitting in the dark upstairs, scrolling through old photos of us. The light from the screen painted her face in a cold, blue glow. She looked up and said, "You used to look at me differently." I said, "So did you." Then I walked away. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a man who stopped loving his wife. I saw a man who finally stopped begging to be understood. That realization didn't hurt. It grounded me. Downstairs, I heard her crying quietly. Not loud, performative sobs, just the kind that come when the realization finally sinks in. The person you pushed away isn't coming back this time. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I just let the silence do the work. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She was standing in the kitchen, making coffee, humming softly, the kind of forced calm that only appears when someone's trying to rewrite the night before. The smell of Starbucks roast filled the air, familiar but hollow. I watched her from the hallway. She glanced at me once, quickly, then back at her cup. No, good morning. No mention of what she'd said in the car. Just the ritual, Coffee, sugar, avoidance. That's when I realized this wasn't new. We'd been living in rehearsed peace for months, pretending things were fine as long as we didn't talk about the truth. She handed me a mug like nothing was wrong. I took it, but didn't drink. "You think silence fixes things?" I said quietly. She froze. Her eyes flicked toward me, cautious. "I just don't want to fight." I shook my head. "We stopped fighting a long time ago. That's the problem." Her face fell, but she didn't respond. She just turned away, pretending to check her phone. I could see her reflection in the microwave door. Eyes that used to challenge me now looked uncertain. She was losing grip on the narrative she'd built, the version of herself that always had control. I went upstairs, grabbed my jacket, and left without saying another word. Outside, the air was sharp, clean, the kind that stings your lungs and clears your head. I drove nowhere in particular, just needed distance. Stopped at a gas station, grabbed a black coffee, and sat in the car watching the world move without me. My phone buzzed. A text from her. "Can we talk tonight?" I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood she didn't want to talk. She wanted to reset. She wanted me to forget that her words still echoed every time I looked at her. When I got home later, she was waiting on the couch, eyes red but posture rehearsed. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. She said she just wanted to feel close again. I told her closeness doesn't survive dishonesty. It dies in silence, and we'd been silent for far too long. She whispered, "So that's it?" I said no. That was it months ago. Then I walked upstairs, leaving her staring at the empty coffee mug on the table, the last trace of the life she kept pretending we still had. That night, the house felt colder than usual. The heater was on, but it didn't matter. Some kinds of cold don't come from the air. They come from distance. She stayed downstairs for a long time after I went to bed. I could hear faint movement, drawers opening, a cupboard door closing, the sound of a wine bottle being set down. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when love had turned into performance. I remembered the first year, late-night drives to nowhere, cheap pizza on the hood of my Ford, the way she used to fall asleep mid-conversation with her head on my shoulder. Back then, everything felt real, effortless. Now, even silence had become staged. Sometime around midnight, she came upstairs. She stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. "I don't know how we got here," she said. I didn't move. "You do," I answered quietly. She hesitated, then walked closer. "You're shutting me out." I turned my head toward her. "No, you locked the door long before I stopped knocking." She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't know how. Her shoulders dropped, and she sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under her weight. I could smell the wine on her breath. She stared at her hands, twisting her ring slowly. "I just want us to be okay again," she said. "Then stop pretending we are," I replied. She looked up, and for the first time, her eyes weren't defensive. They were scared. That was the moment it hit her. She wasn't losing a fight. She was losing a person who no longer cared about winning one. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark street. The reflection in the glass showed her sitting there, still frozen in place. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet sadness that came from knowing some things can't be rebuilt. She whispered, "Do you still love me?" I took a long breath before answering. "I care about you. But love doesn't survive lies. It survives honesty. And we ran out of that a long time ago." When I turned around, she was crying silently. No sound, just tears falling onto her hands. I didn't comfort her. Not out of cruelty, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let the truth hurt enough to heal. I left the room, closed the door gently, and for the first time in years, slept without waiting for her to follow. The next morning, the house was quiet, too quiet. No clinking of mugs, no sound of the coffee maker brewing. Just sunlight bleeding through the blinds, sharp and cold. When I walked downstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her robe, a half-finished cup of coffee beside her. Her eyes looked swollen, like she hadn't slept. She didn't say good morning. She just stared at me, waiting for something. Maybe a spark of the man who used to reassure her. But that man had gone silent months ago. Finally, she said, "I can't live like this." I leaned against the counter. "Then don't." Her eyes widened, like she couldn't believe I said it. But I wasn't trying to be cruel, just honest. There comes a point where you stop rescuing someone from the consequences of the world they built. She looked away, her fingers trembling as she picked at the edge of her mug. You're really done, aren't you? I didn't answer. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the smell filling the air, grounding me. Starbucks house blend, the same one she used to surprise me with every morning, back when little things still mattered. Now it just felt like ritual without meaning. She tried again. I just thought maybe we could find our way back. I set the cup down and looked at her. You can't find your way back to something you burned down. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry this time. She just nodded slowly, like the words finally landed. Then she whispered, I didn't mean for it to get this bad. Neither did I. But love doesn't crumble overnight. It dies in small doses, missed apologies, silent dinners, truths left unsaid. I left for work without another word. The drive felt lighter somehow, the weight in my chest shifting from grief to acceptance. I stopped at a red light and caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time, I didn't look like the man she had defined. I looked like someone rebuilding. That evening, when I came home, she wasn't there. Her car was gone, and so was her suitcase. On the counter, she'd left a note. I need space. I folded it once, set it aside, and poured myself another cup of coffee. No anger. No relief. Just silence. The kind that tells you the story's ending, but you're still here, ready for the next chapter. When I got home that night, the house felt hollow. Her absence wasn't loud, it was absolute. The kind of emptiness that doesn't echo, it just settles. The note she left was still on the counter, a small square of paper that somehow carried years of weight. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to. I need space. Wasn't a confession, it was an excuse. I made dinner alone, the way I used to before we met. Pasta, nothing special. The silence was strange at first, but not unbearable. I realized how long it had been since I'd eaten without tension sitting across the table. Afterward, I cleaned the dishes, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark living room with only the hum of the refrigerator breaking the quiet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was something else, aware. It hit me that peace doesn't come when things go back to normal. It comes when you stop trying to. Over the next few days, she didn't call. No texts, no explanations. The space she asked for was finally real. And it was working for me. I started waking up earlier, running before work, drinking black coffee instead of the sweet mix she liked. I began existing outside of her orbit. A week later, she showed up. I was coming back from the gym when I saw her car in the driveway. She was sitting on the porch steps, looking smaller than I remembered. No makeup, no rehearsed confidence. Just a woman who'd run out of ways to pretend she was in control. She stood when I got closer. I didn't know where else to go. I set my gym bag down. That's not true. Her eyes filled, but she didn't deny it. She took a step toward me. Can we just talk? I didn't move. Talking is what we used to do instead of listening. She froze, her breath shaky. You really won't even try? I looked at her for a long moment. The version of me she knew would have cracked by now, softened, forgiven, tried to rebuild. But that man was gone. Finally, I said, you wanted space. I gave it to you. Now you're standing in it. Her tears broke then, silent, real. I didn't comfort her. I walked past her, opened the door, and left it open behind me. She could walk in, or she could walk away. Either way, I wasn't waiting anymore. She didn't walk in right away. She stood there, one hand on the doorframe, eyes darting between me and the living room she used to call home. It was like she was waiting for permission to belong again, but I didn't give it. I just walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. After a long pause, she stepped inside. Her footsteps were slow, uncertain, echoing through the quiet house. She looked around like she was seeing everything for the first time. The reorganized shelves, the missing photos, the absence of her things. It wasn't a home to her anymore. It was a reminder of what she'd erased. She said, you changed everything. I nodded. That's what happens when something breaks. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're colder now. No, I said. I'm just not performing warmth anymore. She flinched. I could tell she wanted to argue, but exhaustion took over instead. She sat on the couch, the same one where she once rehearsed her apologies. I thought leaving would make things clearer, she said quietly. Did it? Her silence answered for her. She looked down, tracing her finger along the seam of a cushion like she was searching for something solid. I thought maybe you'd miss me. I took a sip of water. I did. For a while. Then I missed myself more. The words landed like a knife wrapped in truth. She blinked fast, swallowing hard. I don't know how to fix this. That's because you're still trying to. She looked up then, and for the first time, I saw her really see me, not as the man she could bend or convince, but as someone entirely separate from her. Someone she no longer had access to. I never thought you'd actually let me go, she whispered. I didn't let you go, I said. You walked out. I just didn't chase. Her breathing hitched, and for a moment, she seemed to understand the full weight of what that meant. She stood up, hesitated, then said softly, You win. I shook my head. There's no winning in walking away from something that stopped existing. She looked around one last time, at the walls, the couch, the quiet. Then she left. No dramatic words, no slammed doors. Just silence. And as I watched her car disappear down the street, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't watching her leave. I was watching peace arrive. Days passed, then weeks. The silence that used to feel suffocating now felt like oxygen. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I wasn't checking my phone or replaying old conversations. Instead, I started to rebuild in small, quiet ways. Morning runs, late-night reading, learning to cook something that didn't come from a box. The house, once heavy with her presence, began to sound different. Lighter. Alive. One evening, I came home to find a small package on the porch. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter while I made dinner, but it pulled at me, quiet and persistent. When I finally opened it, there was a photo inside. Us, from years ago, smiling on a beach in California. And beneath it, a note. I finally understand. You didn't leave me. You left the version of yourself that loved my chaos. I read it twice. Then I set it down, feeling something shift inside. Not sadness, not anger, just finality. For the first time, she'd said something real. That night, I sat outside with a cup of black coffee, watching the sky fade into deep blue. I thought about how love can turn into memory without permission, how people cling to what they broke because the silence after is too loud. But I wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. I'd learned to live inside it. 2 days later, I ran into her at a small cafe downtown, the kind with chipped mugs and old Springsteen playing in the background. She looked different, calmer, the kind of calm that comes after surrender, not victory. She smiled, hesitant. You look good. Thanks, I said. There was a pause, long, but not uncomfortable. For the first time, there was no tension, no unsaid words clawing at the air. Just two people who used to love each other, standing on opposite sides of peace. She finally said, I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I nodded. That's usually how it works. She smiled faintly, and then, almost to herself, said, You were always too quiet for me. I met her eyes and said, No. You were just too loud to hear what silence was saying. We didn't hug. We didn't make promises. She left first, and I stayed, sipping my coffee, watching her reflection fade in the window. That was the last time I ever saw her. I thought that would be the end of it. No dramatic closure, no lingering questions. Just quiet separation, the kind that doesn't scream, it fades. But endings have a strange way of circling back when you least expect them. It was a Friday evening, a month after that last encounter. I was out with a few coworkers at a rooftop bar, the kind of place where the music hums low enough to let you think. The city stretched below, lights, noise, motion. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to feel free in a crowd. Then I heard my name. She was there, standing near the bar, holding a drink, dressed in confidence like armor. Her laughter was the same, but it no longer reached me. Our eyes met for a split second, and in that moment, I saw everything. Recognition, regret, pride. She walked over slowly, as if pulled by something stronger than choice. You look different, she said. I am. She smiled faintly, scanning me the way she used to, searching for a reaction to feed off. But there was nothing to find. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. That unsettled her. I didn't think you'd come to places like this, she said. I shrugged. Maybe you never really knew what I liked. Her smile faltered. She looked down, fiddling with her glass. I thought you'd still hate me. I looked out over the skyline. Hate takes energy. I ran out of that a long time ago. For a moment, the noise around us seemed to vanish. Just her, standing there in a world that had already moved on without her. She wanted to say something. I could see it forming behind her eyes, but the words wouldn't come, because there was nothing left to say that could matter. Then a man walked up beside her. Tall, confident, the kind of presence that fills space easily. He put his hand on her back, casual but claiming. She froze for half a second, glancing at me to see if I'd react. I didn't. That silence was the final thing she wasn't ready for. It hit her harder than anger ever could. I saw it in her face, the quiet realization that she no longer had power here. I raised my glass slightly in a small, polite nod. "Take care of yourself," I said. She opened her mouth to speak, but I was already turning away. And for the first time, I felt the clean, unshakable truth. I hadn't lost her. I'd simply stopped belonging where I was never seen. After that night, I didn't see her again. No messages. No chance encounters. Just silence. The kind that isn't heavy anymore. The kind that feels earned. I didn't realize how much of my peace had been waiting on the other side of letting go. I started living again, not out of revenge, but out of balance. Work got better. I traveled. Met people who didn't need fixing or saving. Life stopped feeling like something I had to survive. It became something I actually wanted to be inside of. Months passed. Then one morning, I got a message from an old mutual friend. She'd moved across the country, somewhere quieter, near the ocean. "She's doing okay," he said. "She's different." I stared at that text for a while. Not because I missed her, but because I hoped it was true. That she'd finally stopped fighting the ghost she built. That she'd found her own version of peace, even if it came too late for us. That evening, I walked down to the lake near my apartment, the one I'd started visiting whenever my mind got too loud. The sun was setting, turning the water gold. I sat there with a cup of black coffee from the corner Starbucks, watching reflections ripple and disappear. There was a time when I thought love was about holding on, proving devotion by staying no matter how much it hurt. But real strength isn't about staying. It's about knowing when silence says more than another apology ever could. I took out my phone and scrolled through old photos. The one of us on that California beach was still there, smiling, arms wrapped around each other, a different life entirely. For a moment, I didn't feel pain or longing, just gratitude. Because every heartbreak has a purpose. It strips you down to what's real. It shows you who you become when the noise stops, when the pretending ends. And I'd finally met that version of myself. I stood up, tossed the empty cup into the trash, and watched the horizon one last time before walking away. Not from her, not from the past, but from the part of me that needed to be understood by someone who was never listening. And as the evening air cooled against my skin, I realized something simple. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected.